This HOA Karen messed with the wrong kid, my daughter. She cornered her at the bus stop, yelling about rules and trespassing. But what she didn't know, I'm the chief of police and I watched the whole thing go down. What happened next? Yeah, she got a front row seat to her own arrest. Let's roll it. The sun had barely climbed over the rooftops of Willow Creek when the quiet hum of morning filled the air. Lawns glistened with dew, sprinklers whispered, and the first school bus of the day was still 15 minutes away. On the corner, beside the neatly trimmed hedges, stood a little girl named Lily Mercer, backpack hanging low on her shoulders, shoes shining like she just unboxed them. She was 8 years old, curious, kind, and new to the neighborhood. Her family had just moved in a month ago, and every day her father made sure she got to the bus stop safely. Some mornings, he drove her halfway there before heading to work. Other times, he parked nearby in his black SUV, keeping watch from a distance. Her father's name was Chief Daniel Mercer, head of the city police department, a man who'd spent 2 decades serving justice, breaking cases, and cleaning up streets darker than most could imagine. But lately, he'd been facing something different. Not crime, not violence, something far quieter, yet just as venomous. The Willow Creek Homeowners Association. At the center of that web sat Karen Dorset, the HOA president. A woman in her late 40s who wore her authority like a crown. Her blonde bob never moved out of place. Her voice carried like a siren, and she treated every rule as gospel, especially the ones she invented herself. From the day the Mercers moved in, Karen had made her presence known. The first week, she left a note about their non-standard mailbox color. The second, she complained that their garbage cans were visible from the street. The third, she called the city over a noise violation when Daniel was tuning his motorcycle. But today, she was about to cross a line she could never step back over. From her porch, coffee mug in hand, Karen spotted Lily standing near the HOA signpost. Her eyes narrowed. That patch of ground wasn't technically private property, but to Karen, everything in Willow Creek was under her control. She saw a small figure she didn't recognize, or at least pretended not to. She assumed Lily was a kid from outside the subdivision, maybe waiting for someone. Her paranoia flared, and within seconds, she convinced herself she was protecting the neighborhood. She grabbed her phone, slipped on her slippers, and stormed out of her driveway like a warden on patrol. The street was quiet except for the distant chirp of a mockingbird. Lily didn't even see her coming until the shadow fell across her shoes. Karen's voice cut through the morning air, sharp, condescending, laced with false authority. She demanded to know what the girl was doing there, why she was standing near the HOA sign, and where her parents were. Lily stammered, tried to explain that this was her bus stop, that her dad told her to wait there, but Karen didn't want answers. She wanted control. Her voice rose higher, each word echoing off the pavement. She accused Lily of loitering, trespassing, and being somewhere she didn't belong. She started recording on her phone, waving it close to the little girl's face. Lily froze, tears building in her eyes. She looked down at her shoes, hugging her backpack tightly. And a few houses away, in that black SUV, Chief Mercer watched everything. His jaw clenched. His fingers tightened around his coffee cup. The dashcam recorded the entire scene in perfect clarity. He'd dealt with criminals, con artists, and predators. But watching his daughter be cornered by a grown woman filled him with a calm, dangerous kind of rage. He waited, hoping Karen would step back. That maybe this was just an ugly misunderstanding. But when she reached toward Lily's shoulder, as if to grab her arm, he'd seen enough. The sharp blip of a siren shattered the morning calm. One short pulse, just enough to turn every head on the block. Karen froze mid-sentence. Her phone lowered. Lily's eyes widened as she saw her father step out of the SUV. Tall, uniform crisp, badge gleaming under the early sunlight. Chief Mercer didn't need to say a word. The authority in his presence spoke louder than any shout could. Karen stammered. The arrogance in her posture melted away as she realized who she'd just been screaming at, or worse, whose child she'd touched. She tried to laugh it off, muttering something about community safety. But her voice shook, The chief simply looked at her. Cold, steady, unreadable. He told Lily to get in the car. She obeyed instantly, still wiping her tears. Then, without breaking eye contact, he picked up Karen's fallen coffee cup and handed it back to her. Calm, deliberate, precise. The message was clear. You just made a very big mistake. Karen mumbled something, turned, and hurried back toward her house. But she could feel it. The weight of the neighborhood's eyes watching from behind curtains. The realization sinking in that she'd gone too far. Inside the SUV, Lily sat quietly, her voice small as she asked if she was in trouble. The chief reached over, brushed a tear from her cheek, and said softly, "You did nothing wrong." But deep inside him, something else stirred. The part of him that didn't let things slide. The part that believed actions had consequences no matter who you were. That night, as the neighborhood lights flickered on, Daniel sat in his home office, watching the footage again. Every second was recorded, every frame clear. Karen's words, her gestures, the fear in his daughter's eyes. He downloaded it, labeled it, and backed it up twice. Then he made a call, not as a father but as the chief of police. The next morning, an HOA board meeting was scheduled, and Daniel planned to attend with evidence in hand. The calm before the storm was over. What came next would shake Willow Creek to its core. The HOA boardroom was a place of false smiles and polished manners. Every chair was perfectly aligned, every agenda printed neatly in color, and every person seated believed they were part of something important. But tonight, that illusion was about to shatter. Karen sat at the front of the long table, surrounded by board members she'd manipulated for years. She wore a bright floral blouse, her chin tilted slightly upward, the picture of smug composure. She believed she was safe. After all, she'd convinced herself she was protecting the community. When Chief Daniel Mercer walked in, the room fell silent. Every conversation stopped mid-sentence. Every eye followed him as he crossed the room, uniform perfectly pressed, boots echoing on the tile floor. He carried no anger on his face, just quiet authority. Karen straightened in her seat, trying to fake control. She greeted him with a forced smile, pretending not to remember the confrontation. She even tried to joke about overprotective parents and misunderstandings. The chief didn't respond. Instead, he walked to the projector at the far end of the room and connected a tablet. The screen behind Karen flickered to life. Without a word, he pressed play. The footage began rolling crystal clear. The audio echoed through the hall. Karen's voice, harsh, commanding, filled the air. Her image appeared towering over the small girl, blocking her path, accusing her, waving her phone in her face. Then came the moment she reached out toward the child's shoulder. The gasp in the room was audible. Karen's smile vanished. She shifted in her chair, hands trembling slightly. When the video ended, the silence that followed was absolute. Chief Mercer stepped forward. His voice was calm, measured, precise. He laid out what had happened. Harassment of a minor, intimidation, and disorderly conduct. All witnessed, recorded, and verified. He spoke not as an angry father, but as the chief of police delivering facts. He concluded with one final sentence. No one, not even the HOA president, has the right to threaten a child, especially mine. Then he nodded to the two uniformed officers who had quietly entered the room moments earlier. Karen's chair scraped against the floor as she stood, face pale, voice cracking. She tried to protest, to explain, to twist the story into something innocent. But her words fell apart under the weight of the evidence. The officers approached. The metallic click of handcuffs was the only sound that followed. The neighbors and board members stared, some shocked, some relieved. The woman who had ruled over them for years was finally facing accountability. As she was escorted out of the room, her coffee mug fell from the table, spilling across her printed agenda, the one that once held everyone's names beneath her signature. Outside, flashing lights reflected off the neighborhood windows. Karen's arrest was quiet, procedural, but devastatingly poetic. The self-appointed enforcer of Willow Creek had just been enforced by the very law she mocked. Later that evening, Daniel drove home, the sun setting behind him in a wash of amber and red. Lily ran out the front door when she saw his SUV pull in. She didn't ask what happened. She didn't need to. Her father lifted her up, hugged her tight, and whispered, "It's over." And in that moment, the neighborhood felt different. Softer, safer. The fear Karen had built, the tension she thrived on, began to fade away. By the end of the week, a notice went out. Effective immediately, Karen Dorset has been removed from her role as HOA president, pending further investigation. The new board quietly apologized to the Mercers, promising change. Life in Willow Creek went back to normal. Kids laughed at the bus stop again. Parents waved from porches. The air carried peace instead of gossip. But for Chief Mercer, the lesson lingered, that evil doesn't always wear a mask or hide in shadows. Sometimes, it smiles from across the street and calls itself community. And for Karen, sitting in a holding cell with nothing but time to think, she finally understood the truth she'd ignored for years. Power means nothing when you forget respect. Because in the end, justice always finds its way home. And this time, it came wearing a badge.